Hi, I'm Tori Mystic, and you're listening to the Wear Wag Repeat Podcast, the only show dedicated to supporting women in all areas of the pet industry. I am so excited to wrap up 2022 and hit a major milestone of 250 episodes of this podcast. When I came up with the idea for this show in the summer of 2017, I had no idea that I would be doing it 5 years later, let alone that I would have made Wear Wag Repeat my full-time job. It's amazing to me how many friendships and connections I have made because of this show. I also have learned so much about dogs, business, and the power of community. If you've been a guest or a listener, I want to thank you so much for making this possible. For episode number 250, I wanted to do something special, and my wonderful podcast producer had the idea to do a recap episode with some of my favorite moments from the past 250 episodes. What a great idea, right? Except it was really freaking hard to narrow it down to the 5 clips that I had time to include today from 250 episodes. So one way I narrowed it down was to focus just on interviews. So today you will not be hearing any clips from any of my solo episodes. So I narrowed it down to 16 of my favorite interviews. And somehow through a process of elimination, I was able to find 5 to share with you here today. Now, I am not going to promise that these are the best or my favorite because I learned something from literally every single person, every woman that I talked to on this show. But these are 5 of my favorites, or 5 memorable moments, 5 celebrations of this podcast. And I'm really excited for you to hear it. I think it's a really great way to look back and also to look forward. You're going to be really inspired by every clip that I chose for you here today. Before I play some of my favorite moments, I want to thank Pet Pocketbook for sponsoring the podcast this month. I can't think of a better way to celebrate 250 episodes than by partnering with a female-founded software that serves dog walkers and pet sitters. According to Pet Sitters International's 2022 State of the Industry survey, 91% of pet sitting business owners are women. If that is you, check out Pet Pocketbook, an all-in-one software to run your business on the go. Find the link in the show notes or go to petpocketbook.com. The first episode I want to share with you in this recap is the most downloaded episode ever. I talked to Julie Swan on episode 184 about pricing psychology and what she noticed when she changed her pricing in her dog breeding program. Her advice applies to all kinds of pet businesses, including pet sitters, trainers, makers, and influencers. Since doing this interview, I have been able to collaborate with Julie on a few other things. And that just goes to show that this show is more than just interviews. It is a jumping off point for collaborations, friendships, and more in the pet industry. Here is the clip from episode 184. You have a really great podcast episode that I was hooked on about pricing and how your pricing can really attract the right customers or the wrong customers, and sort of the perceived value in certain things. And I know it can be kind of a touchy and emotional topic to talk about pricing dogs because they're living things. But you broke it down in a really great way. And I'll just let you kind of take the mic and talk about it a little bit, because I thought this applied to everyone in every pet niche, not just breeders, but I just love how you described it.
Thanks. Sure. So I would say, to put people's mind at ease, the reason we charge for puppies, one is because yes, they cost money and they take time, and I want to be there to support them, and I need financial ability to do that. But more importantly, if people don't pay for something, they don't value it. And at the very core, that is why you price puppies. having that said, the price you put puppies at is going to attract wildly different customers. And again, this goes with any product. The pricing is going to be very, very influential on who you're attracting, because you have those people that, maybe they say they want a German short hair and they really just want to check the box. Like they have the cool car, but it never gets mud on it. Like, or the truck, right? They say they go hunting, but really they go out and drink beer with their buddies, that might be the person you're attracting. And so they really just need a really sweet dog that's going to do well with their kids and look the part. And so, depending on what you're going for and who your ideal customer is, you're going to, the picture you put and the money that goes with it is part of that. I think one of the interesting things was when I first started breeding, I priced my puppies very low. They were at like $500. I had no idea like marketing, and I didn't know where to look to even base it. But I was like, okay, that sounds good. Sounds good. And I found that the people I was attracting at the $500 price range, they were just so good. They were good people. They were young kids. Like they usually wanted to, they want to get out, they want to do stuff. And they were the people that would otherwise have gone to the shelter and bought a dog, but they didn't because they knew they needed it to have some skills. Like it needed to be a hunting dog. Okay, cool. So they had zero expectations at that price point from me. Like they didn't even know I would ever be available to take a phone call from them again. Like that's the kind of expectations they had. It was nothing, Fast forward, you move into a little bit higher price point, which for my breed happened to be like around the $1,000, $1,200 range. Those people came to the table educated, like they looked at multiple breeders and they had questions. And I was like, cool, I like this, but they were willing to put the work in. They were the kind of people that would call me on the way to the vet and said, hey, we're going to the vet. What do you think about this? And I loved that because they gave me such good feedback, and it was educated feedback. They weren't willy-nilly. They didn't want to blame me for everything. Like we were partners in this relationship, trying to figure out the best way to take care of this dog. And then something funny happened. The market changed a little bit. I was like, hey, I'm getting a lot of people calling me for dogs, bump my price up. And all of a sudden I move into this higher price point, which isn't a whole bunch for German short hairs at like $1,500. But once I got to about $1,500, people stopped doing any research. It was the strangest thing. They were like, I want the pretty dog. I'll pay for it. And I don't care. You tell me what I need. And all of a sudden they wanted me to do everything. And it really changes the dynamic. And they're the kind of people that like, they don't always want to sit and listen. When you get to a higher price point, they think just because they paid more money, they should be taken care of. And I suppose this applies, in photography, for example. So say you're running a photography business for pets. If they just say, I need to check the box and I need the most affordable package for this puppy. Okay. Then, you want to sell them on more shots. You want to sell them on quick and efficient. You're going to give them a list of things to bring and you're going to call it good. And it's going to be a good deal. You're going to talk about the value, right? And then if you want to get to that luxury high-end photography with pets, right? You're going to have this moment where you're like, I have all the stuff. I've got pretty collars. I've got little outfits. I've got different scenes. I've got it all set up. You just come here with a dog. We'll even do the grooming. Right. And so you can see where people are like, if they want to spend that kind of money, you'll get to that level and it becomes the luxury package. But I just caution you, especially with breeders and live animals, but anybody starting a new business, if you price things lower, those people will have less expectations for you, which is okay in the beginning, because those people, anything that you do that's above and beyond what they expected will wow them. And they're going to be great people for testimonials. They're going to be great people to give you honest feedback, and they're going to be blown away by the service you provide. And I love that because it's such a great way to get your feet wet in any business. And then eventually you can move up. And as you get better, then, I don't think I've been asked a question I didn't have an answer to in about 3 years with dogs. And so yes, now I can handle those people.
Yeah.
But I could not have when I first started.
Well, I think it's just fascinating. Like the whole psychology of pricing. I'm sure there's like 1,000 books you could read about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But I think it sounds like that sweet spot's kind of in the middle. At least that would be my perception, of like these informed people who care, who appreciate all that you put into it, the quality, all the tests you have to do, all the vet appointments you have to go to, all the things.
Right.
Because, I think a lot of people don't know what goes into breeding. But then you do get like the rich people who just expect everything to be done for them. Like, will the dog show up trained perfectly? Will it already know how to do everything? Right?
Exactly. It's very, very interesting. And I do think in essence, when people buy a dog, just like when they buy a vehicle, they are buying a lifestyle. And I think it's very important to understand that as breeders or anyone working in the industry, that we're not just selling things or products or dogs, we're selling a lifestyle. And you have to give them the experience that they want for that lifestyle. And so that's a really key. I found that when you're working with your customers, give them the experience they want in this process.
Yeah. Next up, the second most downloaded interview of all time is with Hannah Kim of My Canine Life. I talked to her way back on episode 69. And although this is from 4 years ago and Instagram has changed a lot since then, for example, when we talked, there was no such thing as Reels, I still feel like Hannah's advice rings true. She recommends that you find out what the thing is that makes you uniquely you, and you lean into that.
I started just bringing a toy with me. It was like a ball. It was like, just random things. And I would just be like, oh, hold this, show it to them. Don't jump up on them. And then I kind of was like, oh, you know what? I should bring around the same thing. And he really liked this one stuffed animal I had from IKEA that he wasn't allowed to get. He knows he's not allowed to get the stuffed animals on like the couch or the bed. And he always went for this one. Like he just assumed it was a toy. So I was like, eventually I was like, okay, it's yours. Do what you want to it. And so I started taking that around with me, and he just loved showing it off. And so it kind of became a thing. And I was like, how cute would it be to document the places I go with Gumbo, and Shrimp is what we call him because it kind of goes together. And so then that went viral. There was a picture at Cannon Beach and that went viral. And that's what kind of blew up our account. So I know people like that content. So I try to every now and then put that into my feed because I don't want to blow it up and ignore my other dogs that people follow me for. I mean, some people like Aslan, some people like Maple. And so I try to kind of I have 3 dogs, so I have a little bit of like leeway about what my feed can look like. Whereas if someone just had one dog, it would look very one dog. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I try to mix it up. I try to put some of Maple, some of Gumbo, some group photos, some not group photos. As for kind of the trick training, I've noticed people like photos that are more like posed, I want to say, with dogs. My dogs will sit and stay. I think some people just want to take candid photos of their dogs, which like totally fine if that's your thing. If your dog won't sit and stay to save a life, like candid photos it is. That's totally fine. My dogs will sit and stay for like food, for pet, for anything. So they know at this point when a camera comes out, they need to sit and stay. As for tricks, holding things, hugging, anything that's like cutesy, people eat that stuff up on Instagram. So if you want to teach your dog a couple tricks, like how to beg, how to hold things, how to hug, or anything like super cute, like that is kind of brownie points too, because people really like that stuff. And it's one of those where it's like unique, like, oh, that dog knows tricks. It's not just sitting there in front of something, and adds movement to the photo and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I've been working on teaching Lucy how to hold something in her mouth, but it is so hard. Like it takes like a lot of repetition. The one trick that we are really good at is kiss. So I think, on my account, it's a lot of pictures of me with the dogs. And so instead of us just like posing there, smiling and staring out into the distance, I think it's like so cute and fun, and it gets a lot of likes when your dog gives you a big old sloppy lick on your cheek. So that's kind of like, I would say, our signature trick is the kiss.
Yeah, and that's what makes you unique, and that's what I was talking about, is like finding that one thing that like you and your dog or your dog does really well, and using that and being like, oh yeah, like that's the account that has, the chocolate lab that kisses the human in the photos, like something that makes it so when people like describe you by word of mouth, it's not just like, oh, that account with the golden, and you're like, okay, that's like 15,000 accounts on Instagram. Like, I don't know which one that is. So having something that really draws people in, I think.
Yeah, I love that. So whoever, if you're listening to this and you are looking to grow your Instagram account, think about like what your shtick is, even if it's like a color or something that's like your thing that people are going to recognize. Hey, dog walkers and pet sitters. Are you frustrated or stressed about the day-to-day admin of running your business? Well, check out Pet Pocketbook. Their simple, intuitive, all-in-one software was designed mobile first, making it easy to run your business even when you're on the go. Save time with automated billing that takes minutes, not hours or days, and get paid without losing money to credit card processing fees. You're going to love their easy, professional pet parent portal for your clients to manage their pets' profiles, request appointments, pay their bills, and communicate with you, all in one place. My favorite thing about Pet Pocketbook is the clean and simple interface that makes scheduling a breeze, whether you focus on one-on-ones or pack services. I honestly could not believe that it is just $25 a month, no matter how many clients or staff you add to your account. Get started with a 60-day free trial, and a member of their pack will personally walk you through setting up your account. With Pet Pocketbook, it's not just software, but a team of real, actual humans invested in you and your success. Head over to petpocketbook.com to get started and make sure you tell them that Bert and Lucy sent you. Now we're diving into one of my personal favorite interviews of all time. I know I told you I wasn't going to pick favorites, but this is one of my favorites. When I talked to Melissa Michener of The Bark Shop on episode 127, I was struck by her enthusiasm and energy. It seriously is contagious. I recommend listening to this whole interview, but for today, I chose a clip with Melissa talking about how she opened her grooming business in Harlem and what it was like for the first few years. So when you first opened the Bark Shop, you opened in 90 days, you were like so excited and so passionate. What was your business like when you first started? Like, can you describe, like, if someone were to walk in the door, like, what was it like being there?
So when I first started, I had this whole idea of a luxury pet care facility. Harlem is a very mixed demographic. So, I can go one block west and I have people that are thriving and, very successful. And I could go one block east and I have people that are on a very fixed set income. So I had this whole luxury concept and, we were going to be really high end. I had chandeliers and like this beautiful pink velvet couch and things like that. I didn't have an awning. There was nothing that said it was called Poor Prince of Harlem at the time. It was nothing that said Poor Prince of Harlem. So I would go out and I would go to Central Park. We're 5 blocks from Central Park. I would walk to Central Park in the morning and hand out my flyers. And I would walk through the projects and hand out my flyers. And I would tell people like, hey, we're right down the block, try us out. And people would say, that's not for us. And I'm like, no, I created this. I created this so you don't have to leave your neighborhood. And then I remember I had 3 of my first clients. One of the gentlemen's name was Mark Harris. He had 2 Shih Tzus, Socks and Kobe. And I gave him the flyer. I was super enthusiastic. And he was like, if you ace this, we could get you all the dogs. And I was like, okay, I'm down. I was like, I had one groomer at the time. We were open 5 days a week. And I said, I have the best groomers. Like, you can trust me. And he came in. He actually did. And he advocated for us. And from then, the dog run, like the news at the dog run, and I would say for the first 5 years of business, I didn't have an awning. So, you just knew to get to the corner of 115th Street. Melissa would take care of you. She would have someone, because I wasn't doing the grooming either. I was growing the business. I was out there guerrilla marketing. People are like, what's guerrilla marketing? That's literally when you have flyers and you're running down on people like, hey, I want to tell you about my company, and that was what I was doing for the first, I would say 90 days. I had made sure that I paid my rent for at least 90 days. So I didn't have to think about, how we were going to make the rent. I could just focus on growing the business, meeting people, talking to people. I'm a people person. I love people. So, and I'm super chatty. So I was just like walking up to random people, Starbucks, people would leave their dog outside. I would be standing right by their dog, like, hey. And I was like creepy girl at the time. Like, hi, I just want to tell you about, Poor Prince of Harlem. And that the word just spread from there. And I think the customer service, like for me, the clients are the centerpiece of our business. And we really focus on that. I always say, like, don't be afraid to go above and beyond because there's never any traffic. So that's something that I really pride us in. It's like we go above and beyond and we have fun too. So
yeah, I just love that. And I can see the excitement in your voice. And I love that you can remember like that first customer who like really advocated for you. I can tell that like how important your customers are to you, that like you remember his name and the whole story and everything. And you mentioned that like when you were kind of walking around like certain areas of your neighborhood and the projects that you got kind of a mixed reaction. Like some people didn't think this was a great idea and, were worried that it was, maybe a start of gentrification in the neighborhood. So why did you think it was important for you to still base your business in Harlem despite some of that criticism?
So interestingly enough, I think it was like my 3rd year anniversary. It was like a little running joke about landlords and kind of the tenants in the building. They were like, we didn't think you were going to make it. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, there have been like 10 other businesses there. So I'm actually the longest business that's been in that space. And I actually opened the bark shop because when I lived in the South Bronx and when I moved to Harlem, I never did anything in my community. I always went to the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side because I thought that that's where I would get the best service. I didn't have to deal with attitudes, things like that. So when I opened, I noticed that the neighborhood was changing. And immediately I thought, how great would it be for me to serve people that look like me, right? But also be an example and become a pillar in the community to let people know, like, hey, there's this young girl, I grew up in the project, so I can completely relate. I didn't have $1 million. No one in my family said, here, just try this idea out. I literally emptied my savings and said, let's do it. So I really wanted to connect with everyone. And I always say, I don't care if you spend $1 or $1 million. I want you to feel good. Even if you don't spend anything, right? Even if you don't have a dog or a cat and you just say, hey, I know a place, because that happens all the time. I have a lot of people in the neighborhood. They know me. A lot of my friends say, oh, I'm the mayor. Like they make a joke about it because I talk to everybody. And I think that's so important. The community is so important in my business. And I know that because I never had an awning for 5 years. There was nothing that had the business name. We had some photos of dogs at the top and we had like a sticker in the window, but it was all word of mouth. We had such organic growth and we built that, but it was important for me to connect with people. And yes, gentrification, some people say, oh, it's not a good thing or it was scary, but I wanted to kind of create that community through the dogs. And I think that it doesn't matter if you're Black, white, Indian, Asian, red, purple, the love of the dogs, the passion of the cats and what we do, I do this because I love it. And every day that I open my doors, I want you to feel that love. So I think that it was just perfect timing. People thought I was completely crazy. They were like, what are you talking about? There's no dogs here. And for a long time, we started seeing like Shih Tzu, Pomeranian Yorkie, Shih Tzu, Pomeranian Yorkie. We weren't seeing diverse, breeds. And then I remember we started getting calls like, I remember the Bouvier, Lucy. There's our first client, Lucy. She's our first Bouvier. And I'm on Google, right? Like, I said, can you hold for 1 second? I'm like, can I please you hold for 1 second? And I'm like, hey, John, do you know how to groom a Bouvier? And he's like, yeah, I could do it. And then I was like, yeah, we can take you, So it was such a great learning experience. I would say opening the barbershop has been one of the best experiences of my lifetime. It's taught me so much as an entrepreneur. It's taught me so much as a person, as a human being. And I think even with the climate today, I'm so restored, my faith in humanity, and the diversity of our clientele and the outpouring love. And, we're going through a traumatic experience right now, with the pandemic. I'm a Black woman, Black Lives Matter movement. There's so many things going on. I live right by a hospital. I hear ambulances. Like at one point in New York, it was every 7 minutes, every 5 minutes, So I think through pet care, my faith has been restored in humanity. And I feel like I just have an even bigger purpose and mission.
Next, I have a clip from episode 48 with Ann Carlson of Jiminy's. This is the earliest episode picked for this recap. It was really fun to go back and listen to how much the show has changed in the past 5 years. Thank you so much to Jessica Bay from Templates for Pet Bros for nominating this episode. I chose this clip that you're about to hear from Anne because she's talking about making a positive impact on the world and addressing big issues like world hunger by making dog treats with crickets. It really pays off to do things differently than the big corporate companies. Since talking with Anne 4 years ago, her brand Jiminy's has expanded to offer treats and pet food using insect protein. Check out this clip.
I knew I wanted to do something that was really meaningful. So I was looking at how can I, as this, single person in Berkeley, California, make a difference. And so I was looking at things like basically world problems. There's hunger, there's poverty, there's climate change, there's water, clean water, all these different things. And, I've worked in consumer packaged goods. So I'm like, well, if I create a product that can actually be different and be a choice that would be a good choice that could help potentially with climate change, could help with food security, that would be something I'd want to do. And as I was sort of having all of these thoughts, I got approached by a group who was trying to create a new treat that was going to be a grass-fed, grass-finished beef product. And I was like, I love this idea that you want to do a sustainable dog treat, but I don't love the idea of using cow because, a cow just isn't a sustainable animal. Mm-hmm. So I worked with them and kind of came up with other ideas. And through that, stumbled across this idea that insects could be the protein source of the future. There was a UN study that was done that really focused in on this and said it could be the end of world hunger.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw it. However, I was also a little skeptical. I was like, well, would the dogs actually like it? So I actually, the first thing I did is I ordered some freeze-dried crickets, and they were for human consumption. And I got them. I took them out in the back porch, and I was like, okay, guys, let's try them. And the dogs, they started drooling, and they were just like, they were so into it. So I was like, okay, I think this can work. And then I figured, okay, I got to try it myself. So I closed my eyes because they actually look like crickets. I closed my eyes, I popped it in my mouth, and I'm like, oh, okay, it tastes kind of nutty. It was like a sunflower seed. It's probably the closest thing I could come up with. And I was like, this will work. This will be really easy to combine with other ththings and make it taste good.
So where do you go on the internet to order crickets? How did you figure this out?
Well, that was actually, just a Google search on my part. But then it was also, how am I going to get enough crickets to actually make treats? And it turns out that there's a whole industry that's starting up of people who are farming crickets. And the fantastic thing is it takes almost no space.
Well,
and this is why
they're tiny.
It's sustainable. Yeah, exactly. So it takes exponentially less land, less water. They emit almost no greenhouse gases. So this is just a fantastic alternative to other protein sources. And the other thing is it's really humane. The crickets actually get to live almost all of their natural life before they're harvested.
Wow. And where in the world are the crickets raised?
Well, I decided that, they're raised all over, but I decided for Jiminy's that we would source only in North America. Mm-hmm. So right now, the majority of ours are coming from Canada. However, we're working with a couple of farms in the U.S. as well as they're starting to scale up their operations.
Do you know roughly how many crickets go into one bag of treats?
I do. I actually did that calculation. There are about 525 crickets in one of our bags of biscuits. And actually, one biscuit has about 5 crickets in it.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That's way more than I thought you were going to say.
Well, they get ground up into a powder that we're working with. So it's actually becomes like a cricket meal.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing is that you use the entire cricket. So
there's like hardly any waste. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's almost no waste. And the other thing about it is that it makes it this incredible superfood because it's not just protein, it actually has fiber as well because the exoskeleton is getting ground up as well. And that provides this great fiber,
mm-hmm.
which we've been doing some work and it looks like there's a gut benefit to it as well.
Yeah.
So digestibility is fantastic.
Finally, I couldn't recap 5 years of the Wear Wag Repeat podcast without sharing Marika Meeks with you. I loved listening back to this interview on episode 95. Marika is such an inspiration for her entrepreneurial spirit and her deep love for rescue dogs. We got to be together in person at the final Blog Pause conference in Kansas City. I remember Marika gave me a bracelet that she had embossed with Lucy's name. We were speaking on a panel together and she actually made a bracelet like that for everyone on the panel. She had the biggest heart and it was such a joy to listen back and hear her voice. Unfortunately, 6 months after this interview, Marika lost her battle with cancer in June of 2020. In this clip that I chose for you today, she talks about timing and why you should never give up on your ideas. As you look back on what worked and what didn't over the past few years, I urge you to take Marika's advice and consider giving some of those ideas a second chance. Remember, it wasn't a no, it was just a not yet.
And it's interesting in life because I always tell myself that when I'm trying for like a new project or a new concept or something, that when I put it out there, I have to remember the answer is rarely no. The answer is usually not yet. You're not ready. It's not time. And it's like if I can switch over to the universe's timing instead of my timing, it's amazing how many of those things I pitched in the past or I thought was a good idea in the past. It seemed to go nowhere, that now all of a sudden I have this content that's already ready and ready to go, but my brand is in a different place. And now that kind of opens doors. And you mentioned what we're doing with Papa John's. We approached Papa John's about putting flyers for homeless dogs on the top of each pizza box because we have a massive overpopulation issue here in Arizona. And so we are being distributed at about 42 locations in the Phoenix Valley, which is really, really cool. But what's really neat about that is this program has just launched. And 2 years ago, a concept that I loved, that I put together, I pitched, I put a lot of time, it had a great reception on social media, was that for a national pizza chain to offer what I refer to as a doggy pizza, which is really just a doggy treat in a little pizza box. So when you place an order and your pizza comes and your dog's like, I want some of that, you actually have a little something to give your dog. It's a healthy treat. It's a little add-on people can add to their order. And then my goal would be to get the proceeds of those sales to benefit an animal profit or animal nonprofit. And so now we've done the Papa John's thing. This morning I get an email that they've picked up the news story in St. Louis, Missouri. And so now we're on Papa John's radar. Even though we did this 2 years ago, now I'm ready. And I've already sent the email this morning. Here's a concept I'd like to run by you. So it's like you're not in charge of the timing. And when you force your own agenda, like trying to pound a square peg into a round hole, you're going to be nothing but stressed out and frustrated. Instead, it's sort of letting the universe flow and letting yourself develop and evolve the way you're supposed to, which isn't overnight.
Yeah, you got my wheels turning already because I'm just thinking, so many people, myself included, try to launch something and push so hard, and it just it's just not working. It's like there's so much friction, and maybe you just have to retry it again in a year or something like that. It's probably not a bad idea. It could just be not meant to be at this very moment.
Well, you think about like all of the concepts that came out, before the .com crash, there were so many new tech startups that had like freaking fantastic ideas. They were brilliant. But just because the idea is great, it doesn't mean necessarily it's the right time in history or other technology things have to catch up in order to really make it be something that's saleable. And there's a lot of those companies that initially went out of business, but the same concept was picked up by a different company that wasn't bankrupt and ran with it 5 or 10 years later, where the technology and the consumer usage of that would be more appropriate.
Some of the best conversations happen after the episode. Send me a note on Instagram at Wear Wag Repeat, or find even more women petpreneurs to connect with in our private Facebook group called Wear Wag Repeat Labs. If you want to dig into more episodes, resources to grow your business, or find a link to something we discussed, it is all right there for you at wearwagrepeat.com. I'll see you back here next Wednesday for a fresh conversation.